All right, folks. We are live on this Tuesday evening, and this is a new thing I'm going to try. So we are going to go through a national weather update, and I plan on making this a weekly thing, assuming it goes well. And of course, this is going to be done. Obviously, no budget, no nothing real fancy here. But as always, if you want to see improvements, please like the stream down below, hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and share the stream as well, because important information will nonetheless be in here. So here we go. So we've got the GFS model pulled up on Tropical Tidbits. And so here's our main weather maker as we go throughout the week. We have this trough that develops sort of on the lee side of the Rockies there, just off of Colorado and New Mexico, and begins to track through the south and even parts of the Ohio River Valley. And so you see we've got parts of the plains. You've got Missouri, eastern Kansas, and eastern Nebraska sort of embedded within that low pressure area as it moves east. Of course, this is around midnight Thursday night. And then you've got this squall line developing through the south, and that is going to potentially bring some severe weather to many locations as we go through the day on Thursday and Friday. And this is what we have from the SPC. So this is in effect, this year is in effect for Thursday as this system gets going. You can see much of Texas and even extreme southern Oklahoma under that marginal risk for severe weather. And the key thing you want to pay attention to with this, and the same thing goes for day 3, you don't necessarily want to look and say, oh, well, Austin, Texas is right in the bullseye, so they're necessarily going to get the worst of the weather. What you really want to look at here more is just understand that this is going to be a developing severe weather threat that sort of just gradually pushes east as we go through the day on both Thursday and Friday. And as we go forward in time, it gets worse. And you see this as we go to day 3, which is in effect for Friday. And you can see we get bumped up to that slight risk down there for much of Louisiana. And that marginal risk expands to even cover, has shifted eastward, but still lots of eastern Texas still in play here, as well as southern Arkansas, western Mississippi. Again, the same thing with this, the same story is you don't want to focus on exactly where the bullseye is. You don't want to just look and say, well, Alexandria, Louisiana is going to get the worst weather, and everywhere else, if you're in, let's say Tuscaloosa over here, you don't need to pay attention. That's false, because obviously this is going to be shifting farther east as we go along with the system. So this whole section of the south is going to be potentially under the gun for severe weather as the system develops. We get that squall line formation there. And, obviously, if we get some kind of a low-level jet feature out ahead of it to draw out some of that moist air out of the Gulf and aid in that wind shear a little bit. And we could be setting up for a very dangerous situation. And it's hard to think that literally just 1 week ago today, we were dealing with a historic snowstorm here on the Gulf Coast that produced close to a foot of snow in many locations that people typically flock to get away from the snow. Myself kind of included in that. I'm a Midwestern transplant myself, so this is definitely not something I exactly expected to happen when I moved down here. But nonetheless, the jet stream has now shifted farther north. The jet stream's not down here in the Gulf anymore. It's been is migrated back towards the Midwest where it theoretically should be. And so now we've got this system coming off the Rockies here in a few days and tracking eastward. And as it does so, it's also going to become a little bit of a snowmaker for parts of the Midwest and even into the Northeast. That includes places like Chicago, Detroit, places like Buffalo, New York. And we could even see, obviously, assuming this tracks the way it is, which it's still a few days out, so we'll have to see. It's a little bit hard to diagnose necessarily any lake effect influences just because you really don't know which side of the low pressure system you're going to be on this far out. It's too far out to tell necessarily if the low is going to track right there or say up here somewhere, and that could completely change the wind direction. That could be the difference between a place like Buffalo getting perhaps less snow as opposed to just accumulating snow left and right. But obviously, I mean, if we take this to be the exact track of it, which is a lofty assumption this far out, but let's just say, for instance, it is. Perhaps you see some snow there in places like Buffalo, but not too much because you're not getting the wind directly off the lake. But then you do see it in places like Detroit and some of these areas, especially farther north in Michigan. Perhaps you even see it to some extent pile up in Chicago, just depending on how much of the system or the temperature is cold enough for snow to develop in the first place. Nonetheless, this thing tracks eventually off the eastern seaboard, and we also see this system here come in and sort of become a mess for the northern Rockies, and that includes places in Canada as well. But definitely the northern Rockies getting a lot of snow, especially in those higher elevations, and perhaps some rain at the lower elevations. And as we get into the Great Plains, obviously we get out of the cold, that's starts to see a little more widespread area of rain developing here on the south end of that, on the warm side, I should say, on that of that low pressure system. But nonetheless, you still see a lot of snow along the northern tier of the country as it sweeps across it. And of course, that would be over the weekend and into early next week. And then it eventually moves off the eastern seaboard. And so we just see this sort of this pattern of many systems coming through, many winter storms moving through the northern half of the United States. And some of those will be more impactful to certain locations than others. But nonetheless, that is pretty much your week ahead right there. And again, if you found this informative, please like the stream, subscribe, share it. Also, go follow my Facebook page, James's Weather Forecast, if you're on Facebook. We also have an X account for this channel now. I will be linking both of those in the description of the stream once I get it published and uploaded. But nonetheless, God bless and have a good night.